where are we? Yeah, it's like, I don't know about it. Yeah, and then she convinces me, no, we have to do this, and of course, then I call the other commissioners, the county administrator. Come on, we got to get a little money here to help, because it's very, very important. Now, you know, since I think 2010, I've been very passionate about food insecurity. And sometime I'll tell you the story, how I became that way. But anyway, I'm Judy Dodge. It's a pleasure to be here. How many years ago was I here when this all started? And it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I just couldn't be more happy. You know, I don't know if you know this or not, and I'm sure you do. It's September. What's September? National Food Bank Month. And I know that we're all here to celebrate that, as well as everything else here. And as soon as I'm done, James is going to come up, talk about all kinds of stuff. You know, the food bank is more than just a place to store and distribute food. It is also a leader in the region for its composting program. The technology and systems we see in place here today are generated by people in Montgomery County for the people in Montgomery County. This very compost will be used to fertilize the produce grown at the food bank that, when harvested, is provided to those who need it the most. And I don't know about you, but boy, oh boy, it is not getting any better, is it? The food insecurity is just as big as it was when I first became involved in this. It's unbelievable. And I've helped with different events, you know, giving food to people, you know, as their cars go through. And it's just so sad. Each and every car with small children and the stories that they'll sort of pass along to you, it's just heartbreaking. As I said before, 4 years ago, we all gathered here to celebrate the opening of the food banks in Vessel Composter, and their mission has only grown from here. You know, it's a common misconception that food will break down in a landfill setting, but we all know that that is not true. There are several elements that cause food to break down, and air is one of them. In a landfill, air cannot get to the produce to break it down. That is why educating our community and promoting easy stay-at-home composting is so very, very important. My fellow commissioners, Debbie Lieberman and Carolyn Rice, and I are so proud that we have been here and been able to provide grants and sponsorships for the food bank, because we know how much you mean to our community. And we thank you all for the innovation and the flexing to meet current needs for all of our citizens. Thank you. And now come on up, James.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Dodge, and thank you, Michelle, wherever she disappeared to. Obviously, none of this would be possible without her visionary leadership, and that extends obviously to our executive team as well as our board. And of course, Lee Truesdale, who I first came to with this crazy idea of, you know, let's compost our food waste and make soil. So mostly, I'm going to keep most of my stuff to the panel discussion and questions, but mostly I just really want to acknowledge and thank all of you for being here. Obviously, all the people that are tuning in online. We never expected that we would get this great of a response. Last I knew, there was over 130 people. So shout out to all the virtual people. Thanks for tuning in. And I hope you get something out of it. And then, of course, to acknowledge my staff. Without them, none of this is possible. And then, of course, I saw an intern, countless volunteers, interns, my sons, anybody, right, that could help us move this project along. So we're very proud to be able to show it off. I hope you feel that it's an immersion experience in our composter. Opposite of what most parties are, we tried not to clean up. We really tried to make a big as mess as we possibly can. So this is as raw and as unfiltered as you would experience our compost facility. And as Michelle alluded to, we are very excited for expansion opportunities that have came our way. It's been a long 6-year journey for me personally in seeing this space developed, but I couldn't be more excited. Number one, that all you people are here to see what we have going on, but then also for, you know, what more we can do for our community. Because as Commissioner Dodge said, that's really what all of our work is rooted in, is how can we build capacity and enrich our community. Compost is an enrichment for soil, and we feel that the work that we do just continues that, right, for our community at large. So with that being said, thank you all again so much. And I have the great honor and pleasure of introducing a person and a company that's been very instrumental to the work that we've been able to do. This project is about, or this day, I guess I should say, is about 6 years in the making. Lots of planning and consulting. And again, we are very fortunate to have Michael Bryan-Brown, and I'm going to read his profile.
Oh, no, don't bother.
Don't bother? So he can tell you about himself. He is an awesome individual on top of an expert in the compost field. We certainly would not be where we are without their help and guidance. And again, thank you so much for making the trip from Seattle, Washington to be here with us today. It means a tremendous amount. Thank you.
All right. I have to adjust this up a bit. All I can say is, wow. I mean, this tour today of this facility and the Dayton community is really impressive. I mean, the food bank not only is incredibly efficient with a great mission, but they also are doing it with love. And I'm just inspired by all of you and how much you're bringing your hearts to your work. It really moves me. So one of the questions that I've been asked several times already today is how did I ever got into this industry of composting over 30 years ago? And so it's a longer story, so I decided I'd save it for this, but I'll try and keep it as short as I can. So my parents grew up in London during World War II, and during the whole bombing on London, food was rationed. It was they were essentially a food scarcity situation. They would get 2 dried eggs a week, and they were down to some pretty lean times. And so that left a real lasting impression on them. When I grew up, it was waste not, want not.
Yeah.
It was, oh, if there's mold on the cheese, you cut it off and eat it. Expiration dates on food didn't mean anything. It was like, if there was food, you took advantage of it. And that was a philosophy in my home. And not only that, they had gardens that they all over London. They converted parks and everything else into Liberty Gardens. So they were growing their own food. And the only way you could, this is before chemical fertilizers, essentially. So everything you did was either manures or composting for supplementing the soil to grow gardens. So that's the way we made that's the way they made their food and survived the war. And so food banks are very close to my heart. We've worked with food banks in California, here and in Michigan, and the mission of a food bank of taking the food waste and finding the best, highest purpose for it is a mission close to my heart. And also then to be able to take that material that can't be served to people and compost it is like the icing on the cake. That makes it a really meaningful endeavor, because that food going to a landfill, as you mentioned, doesn't break down, or if it does break down, it breaks down anaerobically. Without the air, it makes methane. Methane is 80 times more potent as a greenhouse gas. It also makes leachate, and leachate poisons our groundwater. So taking that food away from the landfill is critical. It's a great mission, and I'm really proud to have been helping to have that happen around the country and around the world. And so when you it's also a philosophical question. I think that being able to close the loop, composting is not as easy as taking your food waste, throwing it in a landfill and driving over it with a bulldozer. You can see it takes work for James to make the compost here, but philosophically you have to be committed to something, even though it may not be the cheapest way to go about it. Composting provides a lot of benefits, not only in terms of soil fertility and also improving the water holding capacity of soils. So it really is a long-term beneficial thing for humanity and for our society. So hats off to Dayton Food Bank for adding composting, and super exciting to see all the projects that are happening here, and long live compost. I'll be composted when I die.
Yeah, let me also welcome you all in the name of the Ohio Organics Council.
Mr. Organizer of this event. Thanks for coming. I think we should get started with panel discussion. Let me invite panelists up here to a little stage. We have Michael and James supporting with the food bank, and we have also Tim Pritchard with the Metro Parks. Yeah, so we're going to talk a little bit more about how all this happened here, and once we're kind of like through with the panel discussion, we'll open it up to the forum. So with questions, we'll invite you to ask those afterwards. And yeah, why don't we just get started? You know what? I should probably get my internet. I'm gonna stay here. Yeah, when we had like some minor technical difficulties right before we got started, but that's like life, right?
Of course.
The show must go on. So here we are. And yeah. So I think I wanna start by asking James, why is it important for food banks to have a composting system? You're a pioneer with having this integrated sort of system or process. Tell us, what's your opinion on that?
So having food waste and dealing with spoilage is not unique to the Dayton Food Bank. So from that perspective, and as far as, you know, our broader national network, and thanks for some of the folks here that are visiting and online, it's a challenge that we all deal with. And as Michael said, finding the best possible use of that instead of just dealing with it as a challenge or a landfill product, right? We know what the environmental benefits are and all the other benefits to that, but ultimately it is, we have this challenge, and for me at least, this is the best possible use for that material that causes that challenge.
Yeah, I guess we as composters, we don't have to argue about that, right? It's pretty clear. But what's like the impact or the economic benefit that you've seen after implementing it here? Like, what has changed?
So a lot has changed. One, so this is 4 years in the making that we've been operational. In that 4 years, one thing that's became a major change for us, and it is part of our continuous improvement model, is our internal processes. So we had to completely look at the way that we handled that spoilage and waste in a different way, right? So instead of filling a dumpster or, you know, finding a way to get it away from our property, right? How are we going to capture it and use it on our property? So through that process, this was intentionally designed just to deal with that feedstock. But about 2 years in, we were able to improve those processes, and we're continually doing that and becoming better stewards of that food resource that we have. And then again, looking at the best possible use of what the byproduct would be. So through that, we have not only been able to improve our own internal warehouse operations to divert that food to our composting operation, but also that has allowed us to trim back on what would have been wasteful, but then also open up to the public. So one thing that semi makes us unique is not only are we processing our institutional waste, but we also have a program that's open to the public, a bucket exchange program that we have about 250 participants for. So as a byproduct of paying closer attention and improving processes, then we've actually able to create extra capacity for our community members to be able to tap into with our composting facility.
Do you charge for it, or is it a free program?
We do charge for that. Yes, it's a subscription.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so you can take in more food, I guess. Is that correct? Like donations that you would have previously maybe turned down. Just like, do you have like a shorter window of time that you can take food in?
So it hasn't necessarily changed that much, but it's changed our process around that, right? So we're really more diligently making sure that we are distributing as much food as we can and minimizing what would become waste, right? So as you landfill items, if they go into a dumpster, it goes into the dumpster and it goes away and you forget about it, right? When we're staging food to then be depackaged for compost product out here, right? Our staff gets to touch that. They get to be a part of that experience. So through that, they became better stewards of our food resource by paying closer attention, right? And then a myriad of process improvements that we've made revolving around it.
Well, thank you. So you're also taking household waste from other, just from regular folks around the area. I guess that kind of touches on a little bit what Tim does as an educator for the metro parks. What do you do to educate households around here to start composting?
Well, Metro Parks has programming for learning how to compost, and primarily we have a great partnership with Montgomery County Solid Waste District. We partner together to offer a class usually 3 or 4 times a year called Compost Kitchen. Very comprehensive composting class that lasts for 3 weeks, and anybody that attends that program and completes all 3 classes gets a free composter, courtesy of a grant that the Solid Waste District writes. So that's kind of our primary go-to, for folks that are either trying composting for the first time or have tried it and had trouble with it or want to improve on their efforts. It's a great resource, I think. We also make a lot of that content available on the website, and also, can you hear me? Also available as an outreach program. So businesses, schools, other groups that are interested in kind of a compost kickstart. How do I get started and just get the basics? Myself or other educators can come out and provide that education to get started. Certainly, one thing that we like to share with people is it doesn't take 6 cumulative hours of education to start composting. It's relatively easy. There's just a few things that can go wrong and very easy fixes. But anybody that's looking at compost-centric gardening and really wants to have that context for how do we mimic natural soil ecosystems and produce really robust growing systems, that in-depth conversation would be really helpful. So there's several points. The Compost Kitchen series for those that want the deep dive, Metro Parks website, and we also offer those kind of compost kickstart classes as well.
Yeah, I guess this goes to show that composting is actually one of the only viable trash solutions, or like dealing with your own personal trash at home, right? It's like we can't recycle plastic at home or other trash, but composting is something we can actually take care of ourselves.
Absolutely.
So maybe let me ask Michael, you've been doing this for 3 years, what you said?
Yeah.
What's unique with we're actually standing right in front of it, so to the folks online, like right behind us, that's the Earth Flow Composting System. What's unique about the system?
Well, it essentially, thank you. Yes, so the Earth Flow system combines everything you really need to have a really active composting process. So it's providing forced aeration. So there's a little silver box down there. It's got a blower in it, and that cycles on to maintain aerobic conditions inside the unit. So it's got a perforated aeration floor. So that keeps it aerobic. That's the most piece. Second piece is it has an auger. And so when you get food waste in, it's very non-homogeneous. You've got carbon, you've got food, and microbes are working at a scale that, a bacterium, it takes about 100 of them if you put them end to end to go around a human hair. So you're essentially trying to create an environment and control an environment that's very microscopic. So in order to do that, you have to be able to blend and agitate the material and shred it up. And the system does that in 2 ways. One is by the natural heat. So there's no added heat. This is all biologically generated heat. And so that heat starts to break down the cell structure of the food waste. And so it softens it. And then the auger can come through and shred it. So without having like a really aggressive, 100 horsepower, big old grinder grinding things up, this system does it kind of softly and gently over several days. And then the third piece is odor control. Composting food waste can generate odors. Even if you run the process perfectly, it will still generate odors. And so the third piece is it has an odor filter on it. And so we maintain negative pressure on the vessel, and so it is sucking air into it and then blowing it through an odor filter. And the odor filter is pretty simple. It's wet wood chips. but they work incredibly well because you just have more bacteria that grow on those wood chips that break down the chemicals that are the odorants. So it's a pretty simple process, but when you take care of all the different aspects of what you need to do for composting, it works, and then you can put it anywhere. Like you can have 50 people sitting next to probably about 12 tons of composting food waste right now.
Yeah, so I've seen Courtney load in some
All right.
some organics earlier. Like you handle this on a day-to-day. What's the ease of use? Because I know like composting can be pretty laborious. You have to turn it all yourself, but yeah, how does it look like for you to just like use the system? Because we have a lot of other food banks that are kind of like with us online, and maybe there's some people here in the audience. And what I personally want to see is this is the example that we can take, and maybe there's some other food banks that want to follow this example. So I guess here's the shortcut. You know, maybe you can just tell us a little about like how do you load the food, and like what do you have to actually do to make this work?
All right, so I will give you a little background. My background is in media studies. So I used to teach about media. I have no science background or understanding of, you know, how this should have worked. So the ease of use is incredible. I take one of those big green carts, load that. We have the warehouse folks load that up with material for me, dump in some wood chips, and then I press a button and it magically makes compost. It's a little more complicated than that. But you know, if I can figure it out, I think, you know, much more qualified people can definitely figure it out. But it's been a quick learn process. You know, James has been an incredible teacher. He has taught me, you know, the science aspect of it that I obviously did not know as a media studies major. But it's a pretty simple process. Similar process with the buckets. We're just doing this by hand.
So was that the first choice? So like how did you decide on this system? Was it the experience with renewable technologies, or James?
So it was a combination of a lot of internet research. When this came about, we were initially going to compost in piles, 3-bin system, right? Small scale. And you have to know that Michelle gave me a really dirty look when this proposal came to her desk. And hopefully nobody sees this today. I'm getting it right now, probably, but it was, this better not stink. That was it, right? Those were my marching orders. So I delved into in-vessel composting and was able to find a lot of different technologies, obviously, or companies that offered similar products. It was very hard to find someone that was based in the United States that offers, you know, this type of product. And then ultimately what landed us on the Earth Flow, after looking at, you know, all the factors and costs involved with other type of machines and equipment, was the fact that it is a shipping container that's been repurposed. So we love that, right? We're keeping that, putting it back to its best possible use. But then secondly, the shipping container is just sitting out in our parking lot, right? So a lot of the in-vessel technology is built in a sense that it has to be protected from the elements. So I've seen a lot that are indoors, which from a budgetary standpoint, to build a $100,000 or $200,000 building to then put an expensive piece of equipment inside, obviously was not part of our budget. So finding Green Mountain, being able to, you know, explore their options, and then they were able to connect me with a few places that actually operate their systems. So I had the pleasure of visiting Shenandoah National Park, which has been operating one of your systems for probably 6 or 7 years now. It is in a very isolated mountainous area surrounded by bears. So I was able to go there, see it, touch it, talk to their people that operate it. Because no offense to Michael, but they, you know, they have a salesperson that I talked to initially, right? And that is their job. But they are wonderful in the sense that they say, here, talk to this person, because really they're going to be able to tell you the real world experience of it. And if you know, or I guess you can know about me, you know, I want to know what the problems are. What am I getting into, right? So when I went to Shenandoah, I don't think they were ready for the questions that I was going to ask them, but it was all around, right? What are the problems with the machine, right? I've heard all the good stuff. What's the bad stuff? What are the potential pitfalls, right? So it was a combination of obviously their guidance and the affordability of the equipment. You know, you can easily get into 6-7 figures just for a piece of equipment and a building to house that inside of. So both economical and relationship, right? I felt very early on, I dealt with them for about 2 years while we were trying to find the funding, and they never wavered in their commitment to helping us. It was never a question whether they were vested in the success for us. So
Yeah, but it also shows you have to be prepared to, you know, to keep this going for a couple of years or 3, 4 to make it happen, right? What's the average kind of like project lifespan, Michael?
Oh, it varies a lot. And anytime we're dealing with, you know, a food waste situation, every state has different regulations. And so the amount of regulatory hurdles varies quite a bit. We've done a lot of farms and agricultural applications with the system, a lot of horse farms, and those can be, you know, a couple of months between the farm deciding they want to compost their horse manure and getting the system on the ground. So it's quite a bit of variability. I'd say that that we want to see people make compost. That's our company mission. And so whether it takes 3 months or 4 years, you know, we're gonna stick with our customers before and after the sale, because we want to see the world make compost. So best way is to support our machines doing it.
Yeah, you kind of just touched on the investment. What is the investment for something like this? Roughly, I mean.
Yeah,
We won't name them.
I think. Yeah, I think it's a $100,000 investment. So it's some cash. It's some
Yeah,
cash.
it's good to know though, you know, for
Yeah.
a lot of people out there doing the research and considering an investment composting system. We'll be good on that one, right?
Yeah, and unfortunately, when James bought it, it was about half that, so he lucked out. But since COVID, everything has gotten so much more expensive to build. So yeah, 100,000.
Okay. Yeah, so we've been talking a little bit about this system here and how the Foodbank uses it. I also wanna turn it back over to Tim. Like maybe you can tell us a little bit like how do you actually compost with the metro parks? Do you also have an investment system, or what do you do there?
Sure, we have examples of other kinds of composting in metro parks. We don't have an investment system. I'm jealous, quite frankly. It's such a nice system. But most of our needs are a little bit different. You know, this is a wonderful system for food waste in particular, because there is the potential for odor and quick breakdown, and to be able to balance and really control that environment is a huge advantage. At Metro Parks, our largest compost system is at Cox Arboretum Metro Park. We have a tremendous amount of horticultural waste, brush, debris. We reconnect. There it is. I'm sorry about that. I was saying our largest compost system for Metro Parks is at Cox Arboretum. There's a tremendous amount of horticultural waste, brush, and debris. And for that kind of composting, a aerobic windrow works very well. So we have a couple of acres out there where we have relatively small aerobic windrows and turn them with a tractor attachment that we were able to purchase and fund from the Montgomery County Environmental Services Recycling Incentive Grant. It's a great program for anyone looking to further their efforts in waste diversion. And that's been able to create a really efficient compost system, you know, again, primarily with horticultural waste and brush. We also have smaller systems. So part of Metro Parks is teaching small scale port and ag, and parks like Wiggers and Gardens, Possum Creek Metro Park have kind of community garden scale not quite as sophisticated as this down here. Is such a wonderful example, but similar idea, you know, to promote that sort of small scale production. Where we have, again, a lot of horticultural waste that gets managed in a bay system by hand. You know, and it also provides a really great educational opportunity to just come and see a garden that's fed primarily by compost, you know, primarily a compost-centric gardening system, and show people that it's relatively inexpensive to do that scale. Yeah, so we have those, and we've also implemented a policy for all of our offices and operational buildings that anything generated on site that is organic waste needs to get composted. Get shut off. There it is. It's reconnected. So all of our staff are trained that, you know, food scraps after lunch, scraps from catering, you know, shreds of paper that are soiled and can't go in recycling all go to the composter. And that's various scale, but usually small scale hand managed systems. And it's been relatively easy to implement. So I would encourage any business or organizations considering that just to go ahead. The problems that can arise with something like that are so easy to solve. It's really worth it to just take the plunge and implement something like that. So those are the ways we compost at Metro Parks.
Thank you. So yeah, the home composting is part of the solution, I guess. And we need more institutional composting through organizations like the Foodbank, but then we'll also have solid waste districts and municipalities that need to do their part, I guess. So we've kind of like talked about how great composting is and how easy and everything. So maybe let's just shine a light a little bit on what are the pitfalls? Like, is it always just seamless, or what? Like, you have like 4 years of experience. Like, what didn't work out for you guys? Like, what did you change? Maybe. Yeah.
So as Michael alluded to earlier, it is a lot of work. It's manual labor, right? So there is a lot of challenges seasonally that comes with composting because we are operating, 12 months out of the year. I would say one of the biggest challenges for us is managing our carbon feedstock because we do not collect woody waste here. So that's not part of our facility operationally. We're not collecting leaves, we're not collecting sticks and other, brown materials. It's an important component, obviously, to our feedstock. So a challenge for us, biggest challenge for us is sourcing and managing our carbon. Because the food waste obviously is flowing from our facility, which is adjacent. And then obviously our compost bucket people are then bringing it to us. So as far as the food waste portion of it, or the nitrogen component, is it finds us very readily. And the carbon source is not always, that's not always the case, right? So we've had to source it in various different manners from local municipalities. At times we've had to purchase wood chips in order to process the material that we have. Seasonally, it's difficult to rely upon a tree trimmer per se to provide your feedstock, right? When you're licensed by the EPA, you always have to have a certain amount. So to relying upon that the weather's good enough for somebody to cut a tree to then bring it to you, right? So sourcing that carbon is always the biggest challenge for us and other food banks that I've talked to over the few years, or any other interested parties in composting. The food waste side of it is going to find you, and the carbon you might have to work a little bit harder for, which seems to be counterintuitive to the process, right? But it's not. So that's always been, and continues to be one of the bigger challenges.
Okay. So I think I want to also, we have some people with the EPA here. There's an important connection, I guess, that we need to have with compost facilities and the EPA that is regulating and permitting everything. So specific to Ohio, are there like how are the policies, or at the state and local level? Are there like challenges? Is there something that could be improved, or what can other organizations in Ohio kind of expect getting into this? Is it easy, or is it like corporation?
I wouldn't say it's easy, but obviously it's doable. And I would say, and I don't want to put her on the spot, but our actual inspector is here with us today. I tried to mimic handing her the microphone and she gave me the look, but from a compliance standpoint, and then of course the initial, setup of this for us, and a bulk of our funding came from Ohio EPA's Community Litter Prevention Grant Program. So we were engaged before we even started this process with those representatives. EPA helped us from the state and local level all the way through the process. And I can tell you that continually, we've always felt that it's not somebody coming here to get us in trouble or, that it's a worrisome thing. We've always felt that they've been beside us with this and vested, just like Green Mountain has, in the success. So when you say EPA, right, and compliance and regulations, all those things, it's a scary can of worms to open up. But I would encourage people, engage your local solid waste district, your local EPA, and even at the state level. Ohio has a great group of individuals that are championing, can't say that, composting. So again, they want to see it happen. So obviously their job is to make sure that it happens in a compliant and environmentally safe way. But they're really there to help you and make sure that, that you're set up for success.
So the support is there and the experience.
Could I add something to that?
Yeah,
topic?
sure.
So several states have created a tiered permitting system. So when you have a small facility like this, basically they give you a blanket permit. So you have to apply and register with the states. And then if you keep your total capacity of processing below, say, 1,000 yards a year, then they don't require you to do any additional permitting. But if you start causing a nuisance, then they come back and say, what are you doing? And we need to get you to improve your process. So it's another approach to the permit dilemma that has worked really well in California, Oregon, Washington. So I like some.
Thank you. So yeah, you have experience in other states. So like, how is it in Ohio compared to other states?
That I can speak to. I'm not sure exactly what the reboot button. I'm not sure. I'm not exactly sure what the Ohio permitting is for smaller facilities.
Okay,
There are people who are near here who know, and James certainly knows. So I'd like them to speak to it.
yeah, well, maybe if you are interested out there in the audience to learn more about this thing, afterwards, I highly encourage everyone to start engaging with each other so that we can connect and get to know some of the other people that work towards the same goals. And also, if you want to have someone on your site, maybe consider joining the Ohio Organics Council. We're also offering support. Yeah, so the regulation, the regulatory process is important to get all this running. So now we have it all here. What's next? Like what's in the future for the food bank and the composting system?
I'll throw something in. I think it's a better question for James, but I have a kind of a high dream of what could be done with food banks and composting together. And it's kind of taking a step beyond just basically using the wasted food from what you collect as being potentially viable, but actually becoming, in a sense, an organic waste hauler. So if it was a food producer, somebody who already had wasted food at their facility, that they put it in their freezer or in their fridge, and then when you collect the good food, you collect the not so good food that is not going to ever end up in the food bank. But then you have a composting system centralized here. You have a truck doing a route, so you could improve the amount of food that's captured and get clean organics coming into your composting operation. So it's I know there's probably 100 logistical challenges to doing that in terms of well, is the wasted food contaminating the food that you're trying to collect for human consumption? I'm sure there's other challenges, but it's kind of like, wow, that'd be really cool if that could happen.
Absolutely. For us here, it's looking at ways that we can increase our capacity, right, to be able to then roll that out to our community. We do not have another food waste composting facility close to us, so there are some folks that do some curbside collection and some business collection, but it's hauled quite a distance away from here. So for us, it would be increasing our capacity to be able to service more of our residents and obviously create more compost. Currently, we're at a state where we use almost all that we create. If we could take in more, we could create more, and then in turn be able to put that back into the community, right? So we have people from backyard growers that grow a few plants and donate that stuff to us for distribution to their hungry neighbors, on up to small farms and some large farms, right? That could certainly benefit from the soil nutrition aspect of it. So the hope for us is to expand our throughput capacity in order to, bring more products through our facility and then ultimately have that excess to then share out with the community at large.
Okay, so but it's not like it become a revenue stream where you sell the compost, it's more like you're trying to create like satellite gardens that supply you, or like feeding back the growers, or did I?
So yes, so we have a lot of folks that would bring us their excess produce that they're growing in their backyard, on up to small and medium-sized farms that provide us their excess produce to then be redistributed. So the idea would be to be able to share that with them, but then also the people that we serve, right? Part of our goal here in building capacity in our community is hopefully making people more resilient and self-sustaining on their own, right? So the ability for us to be able to provide the people that we serve with, compost that they can then use in their own systems to provide, food and sustenance for themselves.
Yeah, so.
But as far as the economic side of it, that is not really the interest of our operation, right? We want to be able to cover our costs, which we're able to do, but we're really not looking to generate revenue per se, right? We would much rather be able to cover those costs at a minimal basis and share this resource with our community that's accessible to all.
Yeah,
Thank you.
great.
But I think we could sell it for a lot.
If we weren't a nonprofit.
Well, thanks for all the input so far. I guess we have a little bit of time left on the clock before we're gonna open it to the audience. I think we went through most of the questions that I prepared. I think, yeah, maybe we'll open it now.
All right.
Want to go in here, and then I'm gonna start like monitoring the chat and see if there's questions coming in from online.
Two questions. How long does it take to fill this? How much does it produce?
Great question.
So like how long
Like you
to fill it up? Yeah,
So how long does it take to fill and how long does it take to produce a finished product? So it's what's considered to be a continuous flow machine. So you can load each day, right? You can load 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Someday I may convince Courtney of doing that, but not likely. So really it's material in, material out. So if you're loading it 5 days a week like we are, on average, it's going to stay in the machine for about 14 to 18 days. Then it's going to go into our curing bunkers for about another 30 days-ish. So start to finish, you could have a usable product, depending on what you're using it for, right? In as little as 2 months.
And that would be the age of this material here is probably like 2 months.
Right. Yeah.
And that's a full container. that right there?
That's not quite a full container. The container will hold about 20 cubic yards of material. I would guesstimate that that's probably 5 yards.
You know, what's the reduction volume? It's like food waste is 90% water, so a lot of the volume actually just evaporates or, yeah.
Right. Yeah, so putting material in, you're gonna get about a 40 to 50% volume reduction by the time it passes through the machine.
A suggestion. We on 48 city lines in Toledo. We've been doing layering composting. We've had 3 tree companies bring us all our garbage for the last 3 years. We get like maybe 4 or 5 loads a day. And all
Contamination.
Wow.
contamination.
Do you get much trash in it or any other contamination?
No trash at all.
Awesome.
Nice.
Yeah. We were getting our second year doing in operation. We got city leaves from the city of Toledo. And we had 3 packer trucks put on 2 of our gardens. We're still removing garbage from those leaves.
Mhm.
So I advise no one to get city leaves because when they clean, they take a street sweeper and they clean the streets. And they're cleaning up everything. We didn't think about that.
Yeah.
There's so much garbage in the gardens now, it's ridiculous.
Mm.
So we're still cleaning up stuff. So if you're gonna get leaves, I would advise them to get them from a cemetery. If you're gonna get leaves, get them from the cemetery, less garbage.
Okay. Thank you.
It's really nice.
Yeah.
And it's less true.
Is there moisture control in the vessel here?
Yes. So for the most part, we don't have to add any moisture because as Tim alluded to, you know, our feedstock is about 80% water, right? Our green waste at least. The moisture that we add is mostly from rinsing out the receptacles that we use. So from our compost bucket program, as well as the totes that we collect in our warehouse. And then additionally, it does have a moisture addition system. Sounds very fancy, and it is a hose that then leads to the auger, and you hook it up to a garden hose, and you can water, you know, in the area that you want or the entire vessel as it's, you know, mixing through there. This time of year is a little more challenging for moisture. In the winter, not so much because a lot of condensation, you're trapping a lot of moisture inside of there. But yeah, so minimal moisture addition,
It's manual then?
manual, yes, yes,
You
yes,
just follow the gauges. And go according to that.
correct, yes.
Yeah, moisture and composting in Ohio is not that big of a problem. Like if you go to up in Colorado in the mountains or like some more arid areas, that is a bottleneck. If you don't have the moisture, it's definitely needed. Yeah.
Do you compost everything or do you stay away from the leaves and the breads?
So we compost everything. We don't really have, so bakery items, we certainly have as a, you know, as a feedstock from our facility. But for us, any type of meat or seafood comes to us frozen. So that's very rarely a waste product that we have. But as far as our bucket participants, our community members, we get a lot of meat, bones. Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, at least a few of the operations that the Earth Flow is in service for is animal mortalities. So whole animals.
Yeah, so yeah, we can generally, if we were to give like an operator guidance on how much meat, dairy to put in the system, we usually say about 10% by weight. So if you put in more fatty materials beyond 10%, it gets more challenging to manage the system.
Is it the smell?
It is smell, and it's also the amount of heat, and essentially fats can turn into what they call fatty acids, and fatty acids cause the pH to drop, and then that upsets the process more. And fatty acids also have odor associated with it. So that's the thing that you're trying to avoid is fatty acids.
Yes, let me just pop in a question from the chat online here. And they ask, how many employees or volunteers are on your team to make this compost system happen? So I guess it's to load it, the depackaging is that the
So we have a very amazing warehouse staff that does a lot of the depackaging for us from our warehouse waste. But out here, you're looking at them. We also have some garden team members that also help supplement what we do. But we are the ones that do a lot of the composting.
So how many people are?
Two.
Two.
I was trying to not be too obvious, but yeah, the two of us, and then warehouse folks do the depackaging for us.
Yeah, so I guess once it's depackaged, it's two people, but like, is the depackaging all manual? Are you using any machines or?
We have an incredible warehouse staff that manually does it, takes off those stickers, takes
Yeah.
off that packaging.
Which is probably the cleanest method of doing this. There's depackagers, like if you have a larger facility, but they only work like 99.96%. So there's always a little bit that stays in the process. Okay. Yeah, it's roll the ball right back there. And
Have you run into any problem with plastics?
Oh. Oh, yeah, no doubt. Yeah, plastic, I mean, it's amazing. You think you've got really clean feedstocks, and you know, as already been alluded to, it's 90% moisture. So there's maybe like about the amount of fiber, residual, and food waste that's left over after you compost it is not a lot. It's probably like maybe 5 or 10% of the original volume. So if you only have 1% plastic contamination, or even just a little stickies, you can't really see it in the inputs, but by the time it's all food waste is degraded away, then suddenly that sticker is standing out, like, because it's not brown, it's this white thing that's floating around in your compost, and you're like, damn, why can't I get that thing out of here?
Yes.
So plastics are a huge challenge. There's a lot of technology that they're trying to develop, and it has been developed to essentially separate the plastic, you know, air separators, vacuums, all sorts of devices to clean up compost product. But it's a challenge, especially the smaller you get, the harder it is to not have it be a hand-picked problem.
Has there been any studies on the effects of plastic on the worms?
I haven't heard of anything about worms in particular getting microplastics in their guts. I know I've heard a lot about fish and microplastics. I haven't heard a lot about worms. So I'm not sure if it accumulates in them or it passes through. But yeah, microplastics in soils in general is a concern.
it's the accumulation too, right? If you keep putting it out in the same field, then eventually it adds up there. So I have another question here from online about how many people you need to make this work. They asked if this includes the pickup as well. So I didn't much of understood the question. Because you have a drop off here, right? You don't really do any pickup, or?
We do not pick up. We have about 240 plus very dedicated compost bucket participants that actually make the trek here to drop off their food scraps for us. So we don't have to worry about the logistics of all that, which I am grateful for that, because I don't know how that would work. So it's actually no drop off. All the food that we're sourcing is from either the warehouse or from folks that are actually committed enough to bring it to us.
Okay.
You give
And I
them
saw
compost?
someone back there on
You
the
give them
meeting.
compost? The people who do the drop, yeah.
Thanks. Concerns zoning. When you start this process, is there any challenge with zoning? You're only about one.
So, zoning is, I don't do that with the southern mic. Zoning is a challenge. That's obviously why we engaged EPA very early on. And our city officials, right? We are in an I-2 industrial zone area, which made that part much easier. 3 mics at once. So, but most of those challenges for us were mitigated by educating ourselves and engaging the parties that could push back before we even went down that path. Because now that she's gone, the other thing that Michelle said besides that better not stink is don't tick anyone off, right?
Piss off the-
So we had to make sure that all of the due diligence was met beforehand, before even, investing really anything other than our time in the project. So again, I know it sounds scary, zoning, permitting, EPA, all those things. From my experience, and definitely here in Ohio, they're there to help, right? They want to see it happen, and they are there to help. So I think, again, my words of encouragement would be start that process early with those decision makers and policy makers, and people ultimately that are going to make those decisions and say, how do we make this work, right? And from my experience, I found from our solid waste district to our elected officials to all the people on around it, right, that they are willing to help.
So don't be afraid of the paperwork, right? Just gonna go with it. Then someone else asked, can you talk about the community involvement? How easy is it for people to participate in the bucket program? Are there other ways that the community around Foodbank get involved with composting in the garden center?
So the bucket program, we charge a yearly fee of $60, which equates to about $5 a month. We try to make it as accessible for folks as possible. I hope that the process is easy. You just fill out a form, and then you swing by the food bank, and I get you all set up. So just to explain the process a little bit, folks bring their buckets with food scraps already in them, and we weigh it for our records. And then I jokingly do the dirty work. We dump them in the machine for them and all that. They leave with a clean bucket. So the logistics of it, or the process of being involved in it, I hope is as easy for them as possible, because I'm grateful that folks are committed and want to bring us their food scraps to help us make compost for our raised beds. Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe for the people online who can't really see this, maybe we can get a little slide with the camera, but essentially right over there is where there's a little barn, and there's a door and kind of like a rack where people are being received. There's some instructions, so it's maybe like 10 yards from where the magic happens, so it's all pretty close together. Yeah, then do we have more questions back to the audience? Let me bring that microphone.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, like, you should have thought about very close to some that include many drain collection and possibly solar panels for the
What was that? To integrate solar panels?
yeah, to advance the original prototype to a position where water.
Oh, it's like rainwater. Okay.
Solar power.
Yeah.
Also, the dispenser comes with the Earth Flow.
No, I don't think that's it.
A good idea.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Yeah, you essentially were asking if there are plans to improve the system with rainwater collection and solar to kind of like be more autonomous, I guess.
Yeah, I think you're onto something there. Yeah, we have a client in Hawaii that gets a lot of sun, and they have put in a Tesla bank, I guess is what it's referred to, and a solar array. And so they're all off the grid running the system. And I don't think they've done rain collection on that, though. There's a lot of rain where they are in Hawaii also. So that's something that certainly would be interesting to do. I mean, if you put a solar array on, there's no reason you couldn't gutter it and run the water into a tank and then pump out of it. So yeah, you could minimize the amount of infrastructure you'd have to run to the system, and that would be a big advantage for a lot of installations, especially like island remote communities that don't have a lot of infrastructure.
Okay, now the gentleman in the back. And maybe, yeah, let's get this question first and then. Yeah,
So the question I have is that concerns, what if somebody were to step up and say that they would like to become that partner with? Bring the construct to you. Eventually, where if you ever had that point happening. I thought they would.
are you looking for partners or what's the?
That's kind of the question.
Yeah, so. No, I guess is the short version of it, right? Our expansion possibility is not into the commercial realm of collections. Our expansion is into the communities that we work in. So we, zip code 45417 right here, where we are rooted, is the most important for us to be able to expand our capabilities into. So again, we're not looking at it as an economic model, which really is what that lends itself to, right? Is accepting others' bulk waste, right? And then processing that. So for us, it is more on the individual side and community, right? Being able to increase our capacity to be able to help our neighbors more. Yeah.
Thank you. And just to touch on the solar or the energy collection, what is the actual energy that you need to run the system?
So the system will run, depending on how many times you turn it on manually during the day. Typically it would run between 1 and 2 hours a day. And it's a 5 horsepower motor that's driving the auger. And then there's 2 smaller motors. So it's about a total of about 6 horsepower. Every horsepower being 750 watts. So that's 6 times 750. So it's about 5 kW to run the system, kilowatt hours per day. Plus it has a ventilation fan that runs continuously, and that's about 100 watts. So that's another 2400 watts or 2.4 kW. So I'm sorry, I'm nerding out with the whole engineering here. So it's about 8 kilowatt hours per day. So that translates usually into about $1 a day for the utility use. And that's my theory. James can speak as to whether that pans out in reality.
Yeah, I would say that does. I would say at most, and that's probably Courtney pushing the button a bunch because she likes to do that. As we spend on average between $35 and $50 a month in electricity. And then outside of obviously labor, right? But this is just one small part, as you guys here are seeing, of what our full responsibilities are with our facility here. So we kind of exclude that portion of it. So ultimately, that's really our major expense, right? Is that small utility amount.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that.
I can speak loud enough. Do you
Okay.
got an estimate of cost savings from not emptying that dumpster full of waste, as much as you used to do?
Yep. So the original, and I could do some quick math. The original was going to save us between $10,000 and $12,000 a year. So with the payback of the machine was about 10 years, right? Just looking at the waste disposal costs. And then of course we layer on all the other benefits that having this facility provides us. But just from the numbers standpoint, it was about $10,000 to $12,000 per year in savings over the house.
That's impressive.
Impressive number.
Okay, yeah, do we have any more questions? Maybe also from the folks online, put them in the chat and I'll read them out. But yeah, maybe we'll get to the point where we can just all, get together there in the back a little bit, and kind of like continue that discussion with each other. If there's anybody in the audience that is looking for a partner or for specific advice, feel free to come to me or any of the panelists. Let them know what you're looking for. We're going to try to connect you. I think that's important now that we're all here. That we're making a stronger network for compost in Ohio. And the people online essentially gonna do something similar. We have a virtual host that's gonna take over discussion there. So I'm just gonna announce this for them. Gonna do some breakout rooms in our online forum, so people are essentially invited to the same to connect with each other. And yeah, I guess I'm gonna turn it over here to the virtual host, Nathan, if you wanna take it on Zoom. And here, I think what is left to say is thanks for coming. First of all, thanks to all of our sponsors, Remountain Technologies, Solid Waste District, and also the Ohio EPA that has been putting up the grant that we used to put up this event and the whole event series. There's 4 more events coming up in this series. So if you're interested in compost and organics recycling, the next one is already in October. It's going to be in Marysville, Ohio, at Scotts Miracle Grow. And there we're going to present research into 300 different compost qualities. So they have been setting up test plots where this growing season. And there is a lot of lessons to be learned. If you are a compost maker or a soil maker, definitely come join us there, because just the scale to test 300 different compost qualities is huge. I know most compost makers do their own kind of bioassays and then test the compost against like 2 or 3 others. So having that magnitude of 300 different composts and the lessons learned, is going to be soil scientists. You're going to be able to tour the facility there. So if you're going to join us in Marysville, you'll see the greenhouses there. But also we're going to have a similar hybrid format. We're going to live stream it as well. So if you're just wanting to attend virtually, do that. The registration is on our website, ohioorganicscouncil.org. And also, if you aren't a member of the Ohio Organics Council, I invite you to consider it. More information is on the website. Come talk to me afterwards. Yeah, thanks for coming again. Thanks for helping to make compost mainstream. And let's take a little bit of time. Don't just all leave. If you guys have a little bit extra time, really take the opportunity to get to know each other. We have name tags. Just see who's there, and if there's someone, again, if you have like a specific problem or something that we can help you with, comment and share it, and we'll try to get you connected. Thank you.
And I just want to echo that thank you for time and spending half the day with us today. We really appreciate and are overwhelmed by the amount of people that came and tuned in. So thank you, Judy and David. We have members here from our national office who have joined in for us too. Hopefully you guys have learned something and can help us push this forward across the Feeding America network. So we really appreciate you guys coming out. Thank you, everybody.